Welcome everyone to another episode of Revolution Recap. The Revs dropped 2 points at home on Saturday night against Red Bull New York in a 1-1 draw. Gustavo Bo scored his third goal of the season, which leads the team in scoring, his 12th goal in his New England Revolution career. But unfortunately, the Revs were not able to bag a second goal and bag a winner despite a flurry of shots and a flurry of chances in the closing minutes and in stoppage time. I'm Greg Johnstone. Joining me today is Sean Donahue. Sean, how's it going?
Doing pretty well. I mean, I think I could have used a few Red Bulls after that game to make sure I was awake for this, because the kickoff time was supposed to be 8, and it started at like 8:30, and then I think the Revs waited another half an hour to decide to start playing. So it was not the most exciting Saturday night game.
No, and that's kind of the downside to having a national TV game. We finally get our team on national TV, and then we get a kickoff time 24 minutes or 25 minutes past when we're supposed to see actual kickoff. And it kind of is rough for you and me because we're starting this at 11 o'clock at night, and neither of us are particularly night owls, I would say. So hopefully we won't stay up too late tonight, and hopefully we're able to get this up at a reasonable hour, but FS1 certainly didn't help. Sean, frustrating night for the Revs. Again, offensive struggles have kind of hurt this team once again. Again, they settled for a draw in a game they probably should have gotten a win, especially with 8 changes to the starting 11 for the New York Red Bulls starting lineup. What was your key takeaway from tonight's match?
Yeah, it's something we've touched on before, but I don't think it's been my key to a match before. But my takeaway from this one is just the kind of with the substitutions that the Revolution under Bruce Arena and Richie Williams seemed to be really hesitant to go to their bench in a timely fashion. Around the 60th minute, you could tell that this was a Revolution team where a lot of guys had played 90 minutes in 3 straight games over a short period of time, and I thought there was a lack of urgency from the team. They were playing a Red Bull side that really was kind of a Red Bulls B team with how many guys had changed. The Red Bulls had swapped out 8 guys from their starting lineup, and it was not their best lineup. This was absolutely a game where the Revolution needed to go into, going for 3 points, and, got around the 60th minute mark, and I don't think there was enough urgency from the Revolution. And then, finally they made subs in the 72nd minute, and again, you can make 5 substitutions now under the current rules, but the Revs waited till the 72nd minute to make their subs. And the subs to me in the 72nd minute almost seemed like planned subs. It was Matt Polster going out of the game, and Tommy McNamara and Kellen Rowe coming in, and Adam Buksa going out as well. And I think that was, mostly because Polster and Buksa have, been among the guys that have played a lot of minutes. And Polster in particular is, someone that hadn't played a competitive match since March. And I don't believe Matt Polster had played back-to-back 90-minute games since he was with the Chicago Fire in MLS. So it's been a long time since Matt Polster had played back-to-back 90-minute games. I didn't think he was going to play 90 minutes again in this one. And, that sub to me seemed kind of planned ahead of time rather than dictated by the flow of the game. And, on a Revolution bench where you have a lot of guys that can be game changers, Kekuta Mane was available for his first appearance. He didn't make an appearance. He was available for his first appearance. Buchanan, DeJuan Jones, 2 guys that are add a lot of pace and didn't come on until very, very late in the game. It was very surprising to me that they didn't make those subs. And you could tell, too, in that game that the Revolution, if they were going to get another goal, it was probably going to come by, using some pace and playing a long ball over the back. Christian Pania had opportunities where, Matt Turner would play a long goal kick and he would beat the defender, and he won a corner kick that way. The goal the Revolution scored, again, was kind of a long ball to spring Teal Bunbury behind the defense. And when you have guys like that can add a lot of pace off the bench, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to bring them in. And to wait until the 72nd minute and then kind of go to your more methodical skill players and your pace players, and then wait until the 83rd minute to bring Jones on and the 87th minute to bring Buchanan on, and leave Kekuta Mane on the bench. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially when you're playing all these tight games in quick succession, and guys didn't have a full preseason. Guys keep having a month off between stretches of games. I just don't understand the hesitancy to bring subs off sooner, and both for rest purposes and to change the pace of the game. Because to me, the Revolution looked really, really good at the end of this game when DeJuan Jones and Tajon Buchanan came on. Those 2 guys kind of sparked the game to life. But why do you wait till the 83rd, 87th minute to kind of bring those pace guys on? It was too little, too late for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned Mane not coming on. It also should be noted that the Revs were allowed to use 5 subs. They ended up using 4, so they ended up essentially kicking 1 sub to the curb instead of putting Mane in. So I wonder if he's still getting acclimated with the team. I wonder if they prefer Tayon Buchanan over Mene, which I can't imagine. I made my thoughts on Tayon Buchanan quite clear 2 weeks ago, and then I said I didn't want to see him in a tie game the rest of the season, and it only took 2 weeks for that to completely not come true. But not that Tayon did anything wrong today. I actually thought he looked pretty good today. It was one of his better performances we've seen Tayon this season. So I'm not going to complain too much about that. But the fact that he got the call instead of Mene, that was a real head scratcher to me. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. You would have thought Mene would have fit in this game perfectly, and maybe if you put in Tayon in for Diego, I mean, maybe Mene for, I don't know, Teal or I don't know. I'm surprised, and I'd like to say maybe he's not practiced with the team enough. But McNamara came in and he looked fine. He wasn't the centerpiece of the offense, but he seemed to get in some dangerous positions and put a lot of pressure on the Red Bulls and almost had a really nice chance there. Where he's kind of streaking into the box, and I forget who the defender is, but basically just kicks it out for a corner kick because he knows McNamara is about to take the ball from him. So he basically forced a corner kick there. So I saw some good things from McNamara, and I don't know. I don't really buy the excuse that Mene's not acclimated with the team. I mean, maybe that's the case, but it's a real head scratch for me to these subs, as you said. And it kind of gets to my takeaway too, because one of the subs that came off in the 73rd minute was Adam Buksa. He again does not find the back of the net today. He is now 2 goals through 9 games to start his Revolution career, and you kind of alluded to this, that this might have been a planned substitution. He's pretty much gone 90 minutes since the restart, so this would have been his 3rd game in however many days. Goes back to last Thursday, so what is that? 9 days, 3rd game in 9 days. So asking Adam Buksa to go a full 90 days in this kind of choppy season in which he's struggling, and the season's on, the season's off, and whatnot. It's a bit of a tough task, and you're right. I think that might be a planned substitution, but it's still weird to see a designated player, striker, who is supposed to be bagging goals for you left and right, come off the field in the last 20 minutes of a game where you're the superior team and you're about to kind of ramp up on offense and kind of push forward for your game-winning goal, and you're taking off a designated player. It's just kind of how his season has gone, and I thought it was another game where he was mostly ineffective. That's my key takeaway. Another struggling night for Adam Buksa, and yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say. Just the concerns are just continue to grow.
Yeah, and I can't disagree at all there either. I thought this game in particular was a tough one for Adam Buksa. He had his chances. There was some good service into him. He had some crosses that found his way to him, and he put the shots on frame, but they weren't good enough. And he's under a microscope right now because he is that designated player forward, and he hasn't been scoring the goals. So you feel a little bit bad for him in that sense. I think one goal could change his confidence and be good for him, but there were still several plays in this game where he was too indecisive, held the ball too long, waited too long to make the pass. I think you could say that about a couple of guys in the Revolution's offense in this game. But yeah, no, another disappointment from Adam Buksa, and it was very interesting to see Taylor Twellman, who for those that have been following the Revolution for a long time know that Twellman kind of set the standard for Revolution strikers. Obviously the greatest Revolution striker of all time. So it was interesting to see him in this game tweet out, where is Adam Buksa, and obviously not in a positive way. So to have the Revolution's legendary striker notice too that Adam Buksa is not doing enough is kind of interesting and meaningful.
And Matt Doyle tweeted out that Adam Buksa has Matt Doyle speed, and that's not a good thing for the Revolution. So, I mean, maybe Matt Doyle is faster than we all think, but I didn't necessarily think that was a compliment for Adam Buksa. And, yeah, I mean, he just does not look like he fits in with his team as well. There was a couple plays, too, right before he came off where he seemed to almost get in the way with Christian Pania, and they couldn't figure out how to connect, and there was one play where Butner swings the ball into Pania, and Pania's in the center of the field, and Buksa looks like he's about to run, and he stops, like he doesn't know where to go, or he didn't seem on the same page there. And I know a couple games ago we talked about Taylor Buchanan and Buksa kind of making the same runs and not playing well off of each other, so it might be an issue of he still needs time to gel. I mean, we're 9 games in, in a regular season. That's a quarter of the way through the season. So you kind of hope that at this point you kind of iron those things out. But another frustrating night from Adam Buksa. I think his next goal is going to really be telling how he responds and he gets a little bit of confidence back. Because right now he just doesn't seem to know, where he's going and what he's doing. And the Brandon By sends a low cross through. It just misses the foot of Teal Bunbury. It just misses the foot of Gustavo Bo. You got to wonder, where is your designated player striker, who is supposed to be on that kind of front line. They're supposed to get towards the end of crosses. You have two players that are kind of making runs, and neither of them are the guy you expect them to be. It's not good overall. He did have stat-wise, he had an okay night. He had 2 shots, both of them on target. He was 9 for 12 passing, 75%, 3 for 3 in the attacking third. So when he was involved, 2 for 3 on take-ons, 2 ball recoveries, 1 for 3 on aerial duels, which is where you kind of hope he does thrive. And he had 2 headed clearances. I assume those are off of set pieces. That's according to Stat Zone. So, in the limited time he did have the ball or he was involved, stats, he did okay, but just not making an overall impact of the game. In the game for 73 minutes, had 22 touches. So not really what you would want from your a key striker, designated player striker, when you're struggling to find goals. One guy who did find it back.
It's okay if you have a striker that finishes the game with 22 touches, if he's scoring 2 or 3 goals with those touches, but or 1 goal with those touches, I should say. But it's been the case for Adam Buksa, where he hasn't been that involved in several games now, where his touches have been low and he hasn't been finding the back of the net. And if you're a designated player, you got to be contributing in some ways. And a clinical finisher that takes those 2 chances he has and puts at least one of those away, nobody's complaining that he had 22 touches. But it's just been far too many games since he scored, and far too many games where he hasn't been that involved touches wise and hasn't been that involved in the offense, other than a couple chances that he's had, and then he hasn't done enough with those chances. So if you're that striker that's not going to be heavily involved outside of finishing, that's fine, but you actually have to finish.
If he's getting touches in the box or in the attacking third, it'd be one thing. I don't have stats on where all these touches were, but it feels like he's doing a lot of coming for the ball, holding up, waiting for people to go past, and then kind of sending it back to a Polster or a Butner and having them connect with someone who's run up. I will describe this as well as I can, but if you look at the Stat Zone influence chart, which kind of indicates where players are throughout the time of the game, Adam Buksa, his name is very small, and it's directly in the center of the pitch. So you would expect your striker or your forward to be in the attacking third. He is very much in the center of the field in that center circle, whereas Gustavo Bo is up ahead. Pania, Bunbury, even Brandon By is further along in the attacking field compared to Adam Buksa. So not really what you want to see overall.
Just quickly, because it's when you mentioned the passing stat, it's interesting to note that I believe 2 of his 9 passes that were successful were kickoffs.
Yeah, there you go.
So.
Hey, you know what? Pad those stats.
Yeah. But just putting that in context.
All right, 3rd time's a charm. I think I can move on to Gustavo Bo now. One guy who did score is Gustavo Bo. It was a tap-in from Teal Bunbury. Teal Bunbury and Christian Pena really did make the play, but Gustavo Bo did have a rocket off of the post in the second half of the game. Almost had his first career brace with the Revs, but ended up just having the tap-in for his 3rd goal of the year, his 12th of his Revolution career, and he scored in back-to-back games for the first time this season after going 1 for 7, 1 goal in his first 7 games with the Revs. So nice to see Gustavo Bo on the stat sheet. Sean, what did you think of Gustavo Bo tonight?
Yeah, and he had 3 key passes as well, so he was pretty active. At the same time, if you look at his passing chart, it's very ugly. He was 15 of 29 in passes for 51.7%. We've talked before about how when he's kind of forced to play more of a creator, he can do it, but it's not a strong suit. But it wasn't a good night for him passing wise. But at the same time, he still created 3 chances. He still had that goal. He still had that shot off the post. But for me, it was kind of a mixed performance from him. I think he was named man of the match at the end. I don't know if I would have given that to him, but he was in the right place at the right time for that goal. He made a good run. He looked dangerous throughout, but not as sharp as you would like him to be overall.
Yeah, it's one of those games where, kind of like with Buksa, you can say, well, the stats aren't terrible, but you can tell he didn't have that much of an impact on the game. Bo's stats aren't really that good, but he had a pretty huge impact on the game. 4 shots, 2 of them on target, 1 off of the post. As he said, a 52% pass completion rate. He was 10 for 20 in the attacking third, 2 for 7 in the attacking area. But he still created 2 chances. And obviously he had that goal, that nice run kind of at the end. Also he had, like a billion offsides calls in the first half. They kept hitting him with the offside trap to the point where I thought, He might have been offside on the Bunbury call. I was kind of just waiting for the flag to go up or them to go to VAR, but I guess that was clean. 4 for 10 on take-ons for Gustavo Bo, only 1 ball recovery. So, yeah, a mixed bag tonight, but still, with Gustavo Bo, he's going to launch some rockets, and, if one of them goes in, it changes the outcome of the game, and that's what happened tonight, so.
Well, and he attempted 12 forward passes and only completed 3 of them, so.
Yeah. I mean, not great. He's not a guy you want as your 10. Real quick, too, I just think we got to give a lot of credit to Teal Bunbury and Christian Pinilla. Christian Pinilla with that really nice kind of long cross pass to Teal Bunbury, who ran it the entire length of the field, or pretty much, and then slides it across to Gustavo Bo. Just wanted to get your thoughts real quick on Christian Pinilla, and he's kind of been playing that kind of central attacking role. They've kind of moved Bo to more of a free roaming type of role, which I think fits him a little bit better. But Christian Pinilla, they're kind of fitting a square peg into a round hole in the center of the field. I wanted to get your thoughts on Christian Pinilla and how well he's been doing making that adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing okay. I think it's been adequate in that role, and I think it's kind of worked better than what they were trying before. But he's still Christian Pinilla. He's a guy that has those brilliant moments. He had that fantastic pass to Teal Bunbury to spring him forward for that what led to that goal. Later on in the game, there was a long ball from Matt Turner where he fought with the defender, got behind him, and I think basically was surrounded by 4 or 5 guys and ended up winning a corner kick out of it when he didn't really have any help. So he's good for some really good plays in the game. He's a guy that can be a game changer. All it takes him is one chance to kind of create that play and score the goal or assist the goal. But he's not going to be the guy that has 70 touches in the game and is creating all sorts of chances throughout. He's a guy that's going to appear at certain moments, key moments, and make key plays. But again, like you said, he's kind of a square peg in a round hole. He's not your number 10. He can play that role in kind of a counter-attacking system, but especially in a game like this one where the Revolution had so much possession, yes, he had some really good moments, but also I think he wasn't as involved as you'd necessarily like to see somebody playing that role be.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, so I'm not going to, repeat it at length. But, yeah, he seems to lack the decision-making, too, at times. There have been so many times where he just has the ball at his feet, and he can't really decide where he goes, and he just gets around and they take the ball off him. So hopefully I do see the potential of him kind of growing into that role over time, his vision kind of increasing the more and more he plays it. But I think this setup is a little bit better than what they were going with before, and I kind of like the diamond so far. So hopefully there's some improvement on that end. Going back to the back line, now that we've kind of talked about Bo's goal and kind of the offensive side, I thought this was a really bad game. From the defensive side, I know they only conceded once, but Matt Turner had 2 one-on-one chances very, very early in the game. The second one was really troubling because Andrew Farrell turns the ball over. The Red Bulls intercept, long ball. Henry Kessler does a really, really nice job keeping the guy in front of him, forcing him to one side, and it's really a simple save for Matt Turner at the end of the day. That was around the 17th minute. But there were a few, bad spots throughout the game. At one point, Henry Kessler loses the ball out for a throw and kind of in a NBA kind of blocking a throw-in type of way, kind of stands by the sideline to try to distract the guy throwing the ball, and then the ball's thrown in over DeJuan Jones's head, and there's a guy in the center of the field where Henry Kessler should be, and he takes the ball in, and thankfully DeJuan Jones and his speed is able to kind of diffuse the situation, put it out for a corner, but that was not a good look. Sean, what was your thought on the back line and the defensive performance overall tonight?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that this was not a particularly good performance from the back line. The scoreline I think was flattering on them. If this was a Red Bulls team that had Bradley Wright Phillips instead of kind of the younger strikers up top that aren't as prolific, I think we might have seen a very different scoreline. There were a lot of chances for New York in this one. The Revolution had possession and really struggled on the press when they turned the ball over. I agree. I think Andrew Farrell had some sloppy moments in this game. Henry Kessler had some really good moments in this game, but also had some maybe rookie moves. And that throw in particular was one where you could kind of tell it was going to come to bite him when he was kind of jumping up in front of the throw and taker to try to distract the throw rather than getting back to where he needed to be on defense there. But I think overall the defense is very lucky they didn't give up more than they did. On the flip side, I think the fullbacks too didn't have great games. They were pushed forward a lot, but Butner in particular I thought was really shut down getting forward. He's a guy that when he has had space and opportunity to send a cross into the box has been able to do that well. But he only had one outside of the corner kicks. He only had one cross attempt in this game. So overall, I don't think it was a great night for the back four.
Yeah, and this was not Andrew Farrell's best game. We've been praising Andrew Farrell for a while, or at least we thought he's done very well since moving to center back last year. But, I mentioned that Farrell turnover in the 17th minute. He also had a moment in the 78th minute where there's kind of a low cross, and Farrell kind of tries to clear it out, but kind of just kicks it up in the air, and it's recovered by the Red Bulls just outside of the box, and that was a bit dangerous. And then in the 85th minute, there's one where he's trying to boot it long, and he kind of just boots it up in the air and chases it down again and tries to boot it again and turns that one over. And there's just some really kind of tough moments to watch from Andrew Farrell tonight. This was one of his, I think, poorer games of the year. And, there's not a whole lot of stats that back it up. Passing-wise, 77%, but, he's a center back, so you're not going to really learn too much from that. But if you go to his Who Score rating, he had the worst Who Score rating of all of the Revs players, not just starters, outside of Tim Parker, who got the red card and had a 5.59 rating, and one sub on the Red Bulls. He had the lowest rating of the night with just a solid 6, which is not great for someone who goes a full 90. So, and Kessler too, boy, he's really good. He's probably the best center back the Revs have had in 2014. I can't think of anyone who's been a better center back than Henry Kessler from what I've seen so far. I'm very, very impressed. But there are some moments where he's carrying the ball up the field. I know a few weeks ago he had that play where I think he passed it to someone in the center of the field and it was intercepted, and there was kind of a fast break the other way, and Charlie Davies gave him an earful on Outside the Booth, their new radio show on Facebook and social media, saying, it's not a great look for a center back to be carrying the ball up the field and turning it over. He had another play where he carries the ball up the field, kind of passed back to Bootner. He ends up getting the ball again, turns it over. Instead of running back and sprinting back, he kind of stays up to kind of block the pass, and that can get broken. It wouldn't shock me if we see a goal one of these games where someone exploits that space where Henry Kessler should be and it turns into a goal, or Matt Turner has to make an incredible save. Again, he's a rookie. I'm sure he can get away with a lot kind of at the college level, but so far, I don't know. I feel like he's playing with fire, and I wouldn't be shocked to see kind of a sloppy goal or a lucky goal from one of these Revs opponents with Henry Kessler out of position. So overall, very talented. I'm not trying to take away from the Henry Kessler hype train or the Henry Kessler Rookie of the Year campaign at all, but I don't know. It makes me nervous. I'm not. I don't know. I'm holding my breath.
But I'd like to know what the communication was in that 29th minute chance too, when 5'9", 28-year-old Ben Mines had both Farrell and Kessler back there, and somehow snuck in between both of them to get on the end of that cross from Kaku. That should have put the Revolution behind in the 29th minute. There were several plays in this game where I think again that Revs were very lucky that the finishing from the Red Bulls wasn't better.
Yeah, and that's another one to beat. I mean, he just flat out beats Andrew Farrell on a cross that you would expect Andrew Farrell to clear. So again, I'm not slamming the panic button down on Kessler and Farrell as the center back pairing. I don't think you need to make any rotation. I still am confident with those two, but sloppy work tonight from Andrew Farrell. I thought not his best performance by a long shot, and as I say, Kessler, he's getting away with a lot of risky stuff, and I'm holding my breath. So. And it did actually, I mean, this wasn't their fault, but the goal itself was pretty poor defense all the way around.
Terrible.
That was awful defense. And I mean, things turned around from that point of the night, and that was the 35th minute. So it's really the top third of the game, but that first third of the game, I mean, people were running people were running through them, and I mean that not to say that Diego is the best defensive player in the field, but I mean he just got walked around. Polster, he's played pretty solid too. He got kind of exposed a little bit on that one. Just some traffic cone defense that led to a really nice pass right between Kessler and Farrell, and I don't know, poor all the way around. I'm not going to plant that one on any one specific player, but just not a good look for the defense tonight. And even though there was only one goal, I not great defense, and I got a lot of problems with how they played tonight.
Yeah, that was just terrible, and that was off a throw-in too. So they had time to be set up. There was no excuse for that goal. It was way too easy.
If one of those guys step up and make the play, it's not even remotely close to a goal. But they showed the replay on Fox Sports 1. I mean, there's 4 or 5 guys surrounding the ball on that pass that splits the defense. So not great defense tonight. It got a little bit better as time went on. But again, this is the Red Bulls B team, and you expect a lot better. And yeah, Bradley Wright Phillips is on this team. They're not conceding one; they're conceding multiple goals.
No, but that's a huge point you make. Though this is a terrible Red Bulls team. This is a Red Bulls team that overall is nowhere near as good as Red Bulls teams of years past, but also a Red Bulls team that was resting a lot of their key guys. So give the Revs a lot of credit for getting that win, over DC United on Tuesday, but that's a very bad DC United team. And this is a Red Bulls team that's not very good and was even worse with the lineup they put out there. So, it was two performances where the Revolution looked good for a lot of them, but you have to recognize that both of these games are against teams that aren't very good.
Absolutely. And if you include the play at the end that I described, where Henry Kessler's out of position for the throw-in and Juan Jones kind of comes in and pushes out for a corner, it looked like Red Bulls was, whoever that was, I forget who did that, looked like they were trying to draw a foul, which was a very weak attempt. It wasn't fooling anyone. But, I mean, if you include that play, there were 4 chances where an attacking player was one-on-one with Matt Turner. In the 3rd minute, right at the start of the game, Matt Turner had a one-on-one save. It was a simple save, but still, defense let him down. Andrew Farrell turns the ball over in the 17th minute. Kessler is there to kind of carry a guy onto to the near side, but still one-on-one could have easily, if it was a better place shot, that could have been a goal. The goal itself in the 35th minute, broke through one-on-one chance. Matt Turner didn't have a shot. And then, as I say, at the end of the game there, if he decides to take a shot and it's well placed, that could very easily have been a 2-1 loss. So not a great performance from the defense. We did get a question during the game about Brandon By's crossing, which I know we've talked a lot about, but I think it's kind of worth noting here because he went 2 for 7 on crosses tonight. Most of those, I think 2 or 3 of them were kind of late in the game, just kind of what the hell crosses. So I think that's why that number looks worse than it is. But he was 2 for 4 in the first half, created 2 chances, both of them off of those crosses. He went a bit cold. I know we praised him a lot for improving his crossing earlier in the season, but I forget the stat. I looked it up, but I think he went 10%, like 2 for 20 or something like that, between the MLS's back tournament and the first 2 games of the restart. A little bit more promising tonight, but I just want to get your thoughts on Brandon By's crossing abilities and where you stand, if he is more the same from what we've seen in years past or if he's genuinely improved.
Well, and to give some context to that question, I remember it came in, and I think the next minute, Brandon By had a great cross to Adam Buksa that headed on frame. So I think that comment was the kind of the curse of the commentators and leading Brandon By to have a great cross. But, I think at the beginning of the season, we were both talking about how improved Brandon By was at his crossing. I don't think either of us were particularly high on Brandon By in years past, but I think both of us in the seasons kind of saw a dramatic improvement in his crossing at the beginning of the season and under Bruce Arena in general. But yeah, I had seen it kind of tail off a bit in recent games, but I thought tonight he was good. You mentioned the 2 for 7 stat. I think, both of those successful crosses were to Buksa and, perhaps should have been put away. But there were other crosses too. The 2 for 7 stat and crossing can be a bit deceptive because, if there's a striker that's, an inch away from a cross and putting it home, that counts as an unsuccessful cross if it ends up as a defender. And there was that play late in the game where I think it was, Teal Bunbury was maybe an inch away from, was lunging towards a cross from Brandon By that was really dangerous and didn't get to it. But that goes down as an unsuccessful cross when really that was a good cross. I thought Brandon By had a good night crossing. I think, as always, I think his overall passing, leaves something to be desired. But I thought he had a good night crossing, and I think, that's been an improvement for him this season, despite what we've seen in the past few games. But with that said, I do think when Carles Gil is out there, it draws a lot more attention away from Brandon By and gives Brandon By a lot more space. I don't think Brandon By is a guy that's necessarily going to, beat a guy in the dribble and send it across. I think he's a guy that kind of needs space to put in a good cross. And I think that's what you saw tonight. When he had the space to put in a cross, he did put in a good cross. When there was, a defender within a couple feet of him, he didn't beat that defender. His cross was blocked. So I think he's been good enough for the Revolution this year at that position to keep playing there. And I think his crossing ability has improved.
I think his defense has improved, too. I know we're talking specifically on crossing, but he's made some very good defensive plays, and he's very good in the air. And so I'm a little surprised, because I think Butner is still a better crosser than Brandon By. I'm surprised they don't try to push the ball up the left side of the offense more and have Butner being the primary crosser, so to speak. But for whatever reason, Brandon By is getting his chances. Maybe it's an opponent's strategy to kind of give them the space and force Brandon By to make a play. But I don't know. I do think that there's been some modest improvements, but it's still a bit of a work in progress for Brandon Bye. And tonight was a little bit more promising. I think when he puts the ball in the air, it's a lot better. His low crosses seem to be just driven into opponents. But
Yep.
yeah. Let's get to some Twitter questions. We have some coming in, so we'll get some actual natural reactions here. Which Mocha asks us, what's this team ceiling with Heel back and healthy and Buksa living up to expectations? Do you think this backline with Polster providing support at central defensive midfield is MLS Cup material?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know what Buksa expectations are at this point. But, ignoring that, I think Polster's been great for the Revolution. I think you have some concerns with his health. And again, he hasn't played a lot of minutes in the past few years. He is a guy that's had, knee injury history and playing on turf. But, if he stays healthy, if he stays fit, I think he's a very good acquisition by the Revolution from what we've seen so far. Is he a Jermaine Jones in far as how he can influence the game from there, or Shari Joseph from, no, he's not going to have the influence on the game from the center of a park that, Shari Joseph or Jermaine Jones has. I still do think that that's the position where if the Revolution were really going to put themselves over the top, that you kind of want to find one of those guys. They're not easy to find. But, if everyone was healthy, if Carles Heel was healthy, if Matt Polster was healthy, if Adam Buksa was, maybe getting you, I mean, I don't know what the expectations are, but let's say Adam Buksa was a guy capable of getting you, 12, 13 goals a season. Then I think this is a team that's capable of being right up there near the top and challenging for a championship the way they're playing. They need Carles Heel in there to spark that offense to life and to, win them games like today. But with Carles Heel out there and with Adam Buksa gaining some confidence and scoring goals, if that were to happen, and Matt Polster being healthy, I still do think they could afford to upgrade the central of the midfield despite that. But I do think that's enough talent on the Revolution to be a team that, could compete with the top teams in the league. And I don't think they'd be the favorite for MLS Cup, but I think they'd be a team that could realistically compete for it.
Yeah, I mean, who's the best team in the East right now? Who's the consensus best team? Is it Columbus? Or Philly? There's no Atlanta United, behemoth in the East. I mean, if
Toronto's looking good again.
Yeah, I guess. But we were fine. I mean, I guess that was a bit of a, we played our subs and they weren't taking it too seriously either, but we drew them in the MLS's back tournament. I don't know, if you had Carles Heel, I think you're pushing towards the top of the Eastern Conference standings. I certainly think this could be a top 2 or 3 team in the Eastern Conference standings. I certainly think if you had a healthy Carles Heel, you are in the running for the top spot in the Eastern Conference. But I don't think you're LAFC level. I still think, and it's hard to picture Buksa's ceiling with, we're not really sure where he lands, if he's going to be a fit, if he's going to be a bust. I hate to use those terms 9 games in, but it is hard to see how he fits with this team because we just haven't really seen it. I don't know if I'd go and say it's MLS Cup material, but I would say deep run the playoffs material. I think that's fair. We got a question from Chris Valukas. McNamara looked good out there. Any chance he'll be ahead of Diego on the depth chart? We also got a similar question from OSZ19 on Discord. Is McNamara going to be best used as a sub or starter? So these kind of run together. Sean, what did you think of McNamara tonight, and how do you see him being used going forward?
I thought there was some promise from him tonight. I don't think he played enough minutes for me to get too much of a read on what he's going to offer for the team. Realistically, I think he certainly could end up getting more minutes than Diego Fagundes going forward. I think that's a role that he could challenge for, and definitely could beat out Diego Fagundes. I thought Fagundes had a decent game today. I thought he actually got better as the game went on, kind of exploiting the kind of the long ball situations and playing balls over the top that were successful. He played a role in the goal the Revolution scored. But McNamara is an interesting player. He's not the fastest guy on the pitch, but he is a guy that can create chances with his creativity. And he's a guy that was very successful in MLS a few years ago and maybe has been a little bit less successful recently. With Carles Heel out, I think McNamara is going to be a rotation guy. I do think he's going to start some games, and I think he's going to come off the bench in some other games. I don't expect him to be I don't expect him to be an everyday starter. I don't expect him to usurp the role that Kellen Rowe has made for himself recently, even though he didn't start this game. I think that was more of a rotation thing. But it's a very busy schedule. The Revolution are playing multiple games a week. I think there's minutes for Tommy McNamara to start in there.
I agree with everything you said, so I'm not going to go ahead and repeat it. I just want to go back to Adam Buksa for a second because I think it's worth noting that someone posted on Reddit, Rev's Reddit, the Spider-Man meme where it's two Spider-Mans pointing at each other, and it's one Spider-Man is Adam Buksa and the other is Jerry Bengtson, which I think is
Ouch.
I gotta laugh. I saw that and I started chuckling. So we did get another question. TSB11 says, "What's the point of carrying Justin Rennicks on the bench if he's not going to play? If the Revs needed a goal and he has a proven record of goal scoring, see his goal against France." Sean, proven goal scoring record. I guess not at the professional level yet, so I take that with a grain of salt. But
Yeah.
certainly from the youth levels at college, in the international youth levels, he's certainly impressed. I'm scratching my head about it. What's the point of having Justin Rennicks here?
I mean, I think he needs to be loaned out somewhere. I don't know that I've seen his minutes have been way too limited to draw a conclusion, but in those minutes, I don't know that I've seen enough from him to suggest he needs more minutes. He's played 135 minutes for the Revolution so far and has yet to put a shot on target. He's had some opportunities for the Revs in his limited minutes where his finishing has let him down. It's harsh because he's played so little. I think he needs to be loaned out somewhere and needs to get regular minutes. But I don't think you'd say he has a proven goal scoring record at the professional level yet. Certainly, and scoring a goal in the U20 World Cup is great. But I don't think that's enough to all of a sudden go and say he's going to be, a goal scorer in MLS. I think there's been some worrying signs from him in some of the games he's played where, again, his finishing hasn't been sharp enough. So very small sample size. I'd like to see him get loaned out somewhere and get more minutes. But I don't think I've seen enough from him to say that, if the Revolution need a goal late, he's the guy you want to bring on to try to be that goal scorer.
Do you know how many? I don't know if you have this in front of you. Do you know how many appearances that is? Because I'm surprised he's played 136 minutes or whatever you said. To be honest with you, I would have had the over under around 60 minutes.
Well, that's over 2 seasons, but it's 6 total appearances.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I would have not have pictured that. He seems to only get 5 or 10 minutes where he can't really make a big impact. But obviously, what sticks out in everyone's mind is the Chicago game where he skies that ball kind of over the bar. I think he was in the 6-yard box, which you expect better from a finisher, but give him, as I say, it's small sample size. It's one play, 135 minutes, not great. I don't know. I'd like to see him on. I'm surprised we didn't see him tonight when you took off Buksa. It looked like they kind of moved Bo into kind of just a striker role, but I don't know. I was a little surprised to see Buksa come off and not see Justin Rennicks come on. I see that as a troubling sign. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all, but it seems to me he's pretty buried underneath this depth chart.
No, I think that's right. And, again, I haven't seen enough to tell me that that's clearly the wrong decision. These guys see him in practice every day. And I think there's reasons to question Bruce Arena. And as far as him, giving young players opportunities, it's not something that he has a very good history with. But again, with Justin Rennicks, I don't know that we've seen enough to suggest he needs more minutes. With the Revs, I think he needs more minutes absolutely somewhere else, but I don't know that we've seen enough to suggest that in a tight game where the Revolution need to bring a striker off the bench that he's ready for that role. So it's a little bit troubling, but he's still very young, and the problem is he hasn't had enough professional minutes.
And he's not on the Revs 2 roster, and I would imagine Revs 2 might be a little below his level, but I know the Revs have previously said they don't intend to loan anyone out to any USL Championship sides or anywhere else. They're going to keep it either between Revs and Revs 2, but still you'd like to see him get some minutes and some development somewhere because it doesn't seem like it's going to be coming from Revs 1. So.
I mean, he got that loan last year too to North Carolina FC, where I think he played 10 games and didn't score.
Maybe he's just at the USL Championship level right now, and I know they said they don't want to make any loans outside of Foxborough, but I mean, send him to Hartford or send him to Birmingham. I don't think Birmingham needs him right now because they're doing pretty well, but send him back to North Carolina or Richmond or wherever if you're not going to play him at Revs 2. And apparently, I mean, I haven't been watching every Revs 2 game. Apparently, Revs 2 has been having some issues with forwards and strikers up top. So, I mean, it seems like if they need a striker, Justin Rennicks fits the bill. So, I don't know. We did get a question from Cameron Young about Adam Buksa specifically. Is Buksa lacking in confidence or service? Multiple good chances going forward were not passed to Buksa when he was in good positions, it seemed. This is kind of a big debate. Is Adam Buksa the problem, or is it his service? What's your take on it, Sean?
I mean, I think he had decent enough service in this game. He had at least 2 good opportunities, and sometimes as a striker, two good opportunities is what you should expect. There's been a few games where maybe the service hasn't been good enough, but he's had enough chances this season where he should have a lot more goals than he does. So I think, to me, I put most of it. I mean, I chalk some of it up to the service, but I would put most of that on the confidence. And I do think he's lacking in confidence. I think when he's been in a situation to, even play a quick pass to somebody, he's been too indecisive. And we've seen that too many times where he's had an opportunity going forward and it's just taken too long on the ball and hasn't played it, or he's had that shot and it's been right at the goalkeeper. To me, it's a confidence thing more than anything else.
Yeah, and when you're a DP, I mean, I don't know. He has gotten some chances. I know we didn't talk about specifically the DC United game, but he had a play where the ball was kind of slid to him, and he kind of botched the touch and turned it over. And you kind of expect better from that. I mean, as you say, when you get limited touches, if you're a designated player and you're a target man, you expect those touches to be in dangerous areas, and you expect to make the most of them. And he's just not making the most of anything right now, whether it's his runs or whatnot. And it seems like with each game that goes by, it's either more of the same or getting worse, because I feel like when he started this slump, he was just a little bit off from a pass, or he was beating one guy, and it just seems like he's totally lost right now. So I think it might be a confidence thing too, but we'll see. We did get a question from David Sibilian. How good can this team be if they could score some goals? I feel like we kind of touched on that already with Carles Gil and Adam Buksa. That's similar to a question we already answered, so I'm just going to skip ahead in the interest of time. A casual fan asks us, I actually think Pania has looked better in the middle than he was in the wing. He reminds me of that kid on your U10 team to whom you just gave an important assignment, suddenly has 2 times the energy in his game because he feels important. Are you seeing any of that? We actually already kind of talked about Christian Pania, but that's an interesting comparison that he's kind of rejuvenated. I haven't made that connection yet. What about you, Sean?
No, I mean, he's in a role where he's asked to have more touches on the ball, for sure. So he's getting more touches on the ball. But I don't know that I've necessarily seen him change very much as a player. I think he's, again, like I talked about earlier, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, still that same guy that has some really, really impressive moments in a game, and then, kind of has more of a minor role at other times, and you don't see as much of him. But in the number 10 role, by definition, you're probably going to get more touches.
Yeah, I think his new role too, we're just seeing him a little bit more. Whereas before he was kind of just on the wing, and I don't know. I know the knock on him from fans that he's lazy or he's slow, or I don't know. But I mean, he does. I think part of what we're seeing is that they're doing a lot of long balls over the top, and that's where Christian Pania thrives, and chasing down a ball and one-on-one battles and whatnot, and giving him a lot of space. So I think that might be what he's seeing. He also adds, I'm well aware that as a minority view, a lot of folks are still saying Pania looks horrible no matter what. So there's that too. Also asks, what are your thoughts on the Revs' decision to stand pat and not replace Carles Gil, given he is very much likely gone for the rest of the season? He seems pretty important to this team. I would say that's an understatement, and I think we're reminded of that every single game. Sean, do you want to touch on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of touched on it in previous podcasts. I just don't know how you replace a guy like that with somebody that's even a fraction of that talent and can play that role without using a DP slot. I think it's more of a realization that you can't get another Carles Gil, and if you lose Carles Gil, you're gonna have to change the way you play because he's that important to the team. I just don't know who has a guy lying around like that as a backup that can even do 50% of what Carles Gil can do. And I think, Mane and McNamara kind of gave them options on how they can switch up how the team plays. Neither of those guys directly plays Carles Gil at all, but kind of provide you more options on how you can play differently with them. And I think that's kind of the long-term plan without Carles Gil, is to find ways to play differently. Like we've seen, the past 2 games and the kind of the formation change. But I just don't think we've had this conversation before where somebody's asked about, having a backup really good goal scorer, and those just aren't that easy to find, guys that can come off the bench and be top tier goal scorers or top tier playmakers and are willing to sit behind a Carles Gil or an Adam Buksa. So I think it's just kind of a reality thing that you're not going to find that replacement. So let's find other guys that do different things that can kind of change the way we play while he's out.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to... Well, first off, Bruce Arena said no international acquisitions. They're likely out of the question just between all the restriction with COVID-19. The transfer market is all sorts of messed up. I imagine they're not prepared in terms of the amount of scouting that they would have to find someone to base their entire offensive around. If you're making an international signing, as you said, it's probably a designated player signing, but maybe not. Maybe it's just a TAM, an international signing. Well, do you have the TAM? How long of a contract is it? Where is this guy going to fit with Carles Gil coming back next season? I think it's kind of, from a fan standpoint, you want to, you lose your best player. How are you going to replace him? But it's not that easy when you have limited resources, when you don't have a designated player spot. And when you're going to have to make a significant financial stake. Okay, so you can't make an international acquisition. I mean, how many players in MLS can replace Carles Gil? I mean, he's a best MLS 11 player. He's just got an immense talent, and I don't know who you could find to replace him that's at his level, that's also available. I knew I threw out Lee Win. Some other people had the same idea on Twitter. Yep. That's kind of who you'd be looking at, because Lee Win's got a big salary attached to him. He's not going to be an impact player, though. He's not going to be as great of a player. I don't know. You'd be taking on a lot of salary. You might be taking on a big contract for multiple years. I don't know what Lee Win's situation is, but a type of player like that, there are some downsides. And another thing, too, is that, I'm sure in the back of the mind, Bruce Arena is saying, do I want to handcuff myself and lose, salary cap space next year, an international roster spot next year, allocation money I could use next year, for a season that might not finish? I mean, it's something that I think we assume it's going to finish out and play out, but we don't know where we're going to be in a couple of months, and things have kind of been thrown off with coronavirus. And so, it's a tough one. I don't blame the team for the way they went in getting Kakuta Mane and Tommy McNamara, but in order to replace Carles Gil, you'd have to give up a significant asset, and I don't think the Revs are really in a position to do that.
Yeah, and I've heard the Lee Win name thrown out too by other people, and he's not an everyday player anymore. He's in a month he turns 34. He's struggling for minutes with Miami. When he was with LAFC, he was kind of playing every other game. He's a guy that could probably help the Revolution right now, but I don't think he's enough to. If you're playing him every other game, you're still having to find a way to play without Carles Gil and without that number 10 in the other game. So I don't know that makes sense at this point. And with everything you just said about this season and where they're going, I don't know that a move that like that makes a whole lot of sense.
And another thing too is I'm surprised we didn't see Diego Fagundes try to step in for Carles Gil. But I as we've mentioned, I don't think Bruce Arena thinks too highly of Diego Fagundes. I know he got the start tonight. But as I say, Diego Fagundes was kind of in that central midfielder playmaker role before Carles Gil arrived. I almost feel like that kind of would have been more of a natural fit. But they ended up going a different rate and kind of switching into the diamond, which, as I say, I think I mentioned it earlier, I think is working out pretty decently overall. We got a question from Revolution Report. Thoughts on the new system? Fullbacks way up, Pinilla down the middle, Polster dropping between center backs. We already talked about Christian Pinilla in the middle a little bit. And another thing, too, with this thoughts on the new system, I guess, is the formation change and kind of going with the diamond and Gustavo Bo kind of being a roaming second striker. Sean, what are your thoughts about the Revs' tactical adjustments in recent weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the fullbacks way up is much of a change from what they were doing before, but there certainly have been changes in what they've been doing with, Pinilla and everything. And I think it's, for the most part, worked better than what they were doing before without Carles Gil. But, going back to the point we made earlier, DC United's not a good team. The Red Bulls team that the Revolution played, on Saturday they're not a very good team anymore. And the team that was out there was not their A team. So, it's hard for me to draw too many conclusions, but the early signs are that this is better than what they were doing before, and I think they can grow into it. Matt Polster and the way he plays has made this much more possible. So if he stays healthy, I think this is probably the way they go long term with Carles Gil out. But I still would like to see them, against a better opponent, use this formation and see how it works out. And again, this was a Red Bulls team that the Revolution should have beaten. And I don't think that the draw at the end of the day was an unfair result. I think on the balance of play, that's probably what it should have been.
No, I agree overall. And I think, too, I see a little bit of promise with this. I see some promise with Pinilla in the middle. Tonight was a positive step for Brendan By and his crossing, I thought. And I think Tommy McNamara looked really good out there, too. I look forward to seeing what Minet does on the wings, assuming he kind of comes in as advertised. So I think the tactical adjustments are, catching up to where the Revs need to be in a life post-Carles Heel. And it'll be interesting to see if he does try to make a comeback this season. I can't imagine we see Carles Heel back in a Revs jersey in 2020. I just don't think it would be. I mean, Achilles heel surgery is pretty rough, so I think this is kind of the tactics that they're going with, and hopefully we see some growth over the next few weeks.
Honestly, rushing back Carles Heel seems like an absolutely terrible idea, given that, given he had that injury at the beginning of the season, it took forever to come back from, and he came back from and then got injured again. I would think they've learned their lesson in rushing him back this season, unless somehow the Revolution go on some deep run in the playoffs and you have a chance to go for a cup, which doesn't seem likely to me. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yep. And again, who knows if we even finish out the season with coronavirus. So that's it for Twitter questions. If you sent in a Twitter question and you did not hear it, apologies. You sent it in post-recording, so and you sent it in past our bedtime. It's 10 to midnight right now, so you're a little late on the ball on that one. But did have some news this week. Matt Turner, some contract details came out about his extension. Julian Cardillo from Last Word on Soccer mentioned Matt Turner's contract details. $200,000 is his base salary. There are some bonuses and incentives, which I imagine he will easily hurdle. It's also noted that he is signed through 2023, or at least he's under team control. It was a 4-year contract starting this season, so 2020 and 2021 are guaranteed years. Team options for 2022 and 2023, so the Revs have team control for him for the foreseeable future. Sean, want to get your thoughts on this news on Matt Turner's contract and how it ties into him potentially leaving for Europe.
I mean, it's great for the Revs. They have kind of complete control over him for the rest of the season and 3 more years after that. So if he is going to go to Europe, the Revolution are going to get a transfer fee for him. And if he keeps playing like he is, I think Europe is certainly in his future. So. But it's good news for the Revolution because if you have a guy that's contract is expiring in 6 months or even a year and 6 months, teams are more apt to maybe wait to get him on a free transfer, and then the Revolution would get nothing out of that. But if these contract details are true, they're getting a bargain on what they're paying for Matt Turner, and they have him under control for 3 more years after this. So certainly, if a team wants him, they're gonna have to pay a transfer fee.
Yeah, I mean it's a steal, and. I forgot to do my homework of going back to when we talked about this extension. I know we had a discussion on how much we expected Matt Turner to make. I'm going off of memory, but I'm pretty sure I was around the 300,000 mark, or 250 to 300,000 mark. So 200,000, granted, that's without bonuses and incentives, and granted that might go up in future seasons. But still, it seems to me pretty low for the best keeper in the league. I guess at the time he signed this extension roughly a year ago. It was mid-August 2019, so he really only had the 2018 season, about 3/4 of the season, and then he really only had about a third of the second season under Brad Friedel because he was benched to start the year. So I guess he was a little bit over a full season. I guess he still could have been in the flash in the pan territory, but the Revs made a really they got kind of lucky with the timing of this. And the getting call-ups right after he signs this extension. I mean, the Revs are only going to have to sell him if they really get a massive off the charts offer. And Julian Cardillo kind of mentioned that in his article. He said, the Revs have control of him. Transfer market's all messed up due to COVID. And what European team can't develop a keeper or purchase a keeper at a reasonable price? The Revs are going to be asking for a ton of money. I think Zach Steffen sold for $7 million. So that's kind of your price point. I mean, if you're the Revs, are you accepting anything under $5 million? I mean, what's your price tag for Matt Turner? I mean, you are in a position where you really don't need to sell him, and you can keep him, you can develop him for the next few years, and if he's getting United States national call-ups, I think that's great from a PR perspective. I think you can advertise that you have a United States men's national team player who's getting routine call-ups and potentially goes to the World Cup in 2022, which is throughout this contract. So, I mean, if you're the Revs and you have 3 more years of Matt Turner, you are in no need to sell. So, I think Matt Doyle and Charlie Davies, who kind of expected him to be sold in the offseason, granted they didn't know this at the time, but I don't see why the Revs would sell him unless they got an insanely huge offer. Maybe not at Zach Steffen range, but close to it, don't you think?
Yeah, the other factor here though is how much Matt Turner wants to leave, and we don't know if 6 months from now an offer comes in from a Premier League club and it's $3 million and Matt Turner really wants to go. Then it's a difficult conversation for the Revolution because you don't want to keep a guy that's not happy. They've kind of set a precedent in the past with turning down offers for Taylor Twellman and Shari Joseph that didn't necessarily leave a good taste in the players' mouths. So it's tough. It's very tough. I think that they're in a great situation with Matt Turner and the long-term contract, but if Matt Turner really wants to leave, and we don't know how much he really wants to leave, and an offer comes in from a team that he's really interested in, it's going to be a tough decision for the Revolution to make. But certainly, I would think, minimum you're talking 3 or 4 million transfer fee, and those, I kind of disagree with Julian on that. It's teams can. In Europe have an easy time finding good goalkeepers from their youth ranks or elsewhere. I do think that a goalkeeper of Matt Turner's quality is not that easy to find. I've watched a lot of Premier League. There are a lot of goalkeepers over there that aren't very good that I'm sure teams would love to replace. Same with Bundesliga. If there's an opportunity for him to go over there and play in the Premier League, and hypothetically the Revolution are offered $3.5 million, and Matt Turner says he really wants to go, then Bruce Arena has a very difficult decision on his hands.
Yeah, and Julian, another thing too he mentioned is once Matt Turner gets a cap, there'll be some more interest, which I imagine that will increase interest overall. But I don't know. I kind of see both sides of the Revs aren't in any position to sell, and I don't know. I think Matt Turner would really have to force a hand to make a move to Europe. But then again, if a lower level Premier League team or a lower level Bundesliga team or I guess it would be a mid-table Bundesliga team comes calling and offers you, as you say, 3 or 4 million, maybe the Revs see that as selling high on a guy that was undrafted coming out of Fairfield, Connecticut. So I don't know.
Well, one thing that I actually haven't spent the time looking into that I wish I had before this is what. It's great that he has a Lithuanian passport. That's going to make it very easy for him to go to European teams and, not necessarily have the problems that Brad Friedel and Tim Howard did getting work permits and having to go through that process. But I don't actually know how Brexit is impacting the work permit process where, I don't think it's going to be as easy for someone with, a Lithuanian passport to go to England as it might have been a year ago. But I haven't spent the time looking into that yet, but that's, something interesting to consider. Of course, it doesn't matter if he ends up going to the Bundesliga or something, but that's kind of another, factor in the world right now that's worth looking into.
And Seth McCumber of the Bent Musket did ask about the Lithuanian passport and kind of the process about that. And Matt Turner kind of, take it with a grain of salt. But he more or less said he looked into it after going undrafted, and he was looking at his options, and he kind of looked into his heritage and applied for it after the draft, which was in 2016, 2017. I think it was before the 2016 season. And so he said it was a 3 or 4 year process to get this Lithuanian passport. So he kind of is making it sound like it was just a crazy coincidence. But it's interesting to think of that in the context of he was a free agent last year, and he had signed his extension that takes him through 2023 this year. You wonder if that passport came through, in April 2019, if Matt Turner is still here. I think last year, if he had a passport in hand, I certainly think he's making more than $200,000 as a base salary, and I'm sure some team would have called for him at this point. Well, either way, good news for the Revs, and I think we can kind of, take our hand off the panic button and put away the jump to conclusion mats in terms of Matt Turner leaving. I'm certainly confident he'll be with the Revs, at least to start 2021. Sean, before we depart, any final thoughts here today?
Just talking about facing difficult competition, I'm curious to see how this Revolution team does when they go against New York City FC on Wednesday. Another tight turnaround with not much time to rest between games, and also another opportunity to see what Bruce Arena does rotation wise. Because I don't think he can keep playing the same 11 guys every game in this tight schedule.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, since that's been stressed kind of rotation and depth, and bringing in Mene and McNamara's depth pieces to kind of help out with the tight schedule. We really haven't seen any rotation. We saw Rowe for coming out for Fagundes today, but for the most part, it's been mostly the same starting 11 for the first 3 games. So it'll be interesting to see how they go against NYCFC, a much more difficult opponent than the Red Bulls tonight. My final thought here is I just want to kind of note there's been some Revs 2 games going on. A lot of fans are following Revs 2 and are very passionate about it. Great. Need our support. Great. Just want to say, go easy on them. It is developmental. Just seeing a lot of anger over some of these results over Revs 2 lately. They lost 4-0 earlier today. They're going to be a bottom of the table team. It's starting up this year. They're playing academy guys. Just remember, these are 17-year-old players and 16-year-old players and guys that are at the college level right now. You're going to see a lot of mistakes. You're going to see a lot of frustrating things from these young players, and they're going to make a lot of mistakes. So just a quick grain of salt. Don't hold them to the same standards as Revs 1. And I will also say, if a player from Denmark leaves the team, if a 19-year-old guy from Denmark leaves the team to go home to his family, because he doesn't want to play third-tier soccer in America during a pandemic, don't frame that as a temper tantrum. I just say that. I think that's a bit of a uncalled for shot at a child. So anyway. Sean, where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me at Sean L. Donahue.
And you can follow us at Revolution Recap. I do not know when we will be doing our next podcast. We did not plan this again. But the Revs play Wednesday not at NYCFC. They play home against NYCFC on Wednesday at 8 p.m. And then they also they're on the road for Chicago Sunday night at 7:30. Maybe we will be doing a post-game podcast of that. I'm not totally sure yet. Either way, we'll figure out something. Until then, thank you everyone for listening, and go Revs.